Hi, I'm Larry Levin, and welcome to another edition of Kop Talk with our esteemed editor and Chief Emeritus Bob Cohn. And today we're going to switch it up, and Bob's going to ask me questions.
In the tradition of Tony La Russa of always switching, depending on the subject matter. And one of my questions that I had prepared for you is a native Chicago Cubs fan. I see you all decked out in proper Cardinals red. So who do you like against the Rangers?
Well, I'm a big-time Cardinal fan, and when I grew up in Chicago, even though I grew up on the north side, my grandfather was a South Sider, so I was a big White Sox fan as a kid, which made it much easier to become a Cardinal fan when I moved here in 1978.
Well, and I grew up with Harry Carey. It's a beautiful baseball afternoon.
Holy cow!
It might be under, it could be, it is a home run. Yes, I used to do him doing all kinds of historic events.
Right, and then you found out about the relations between him and Mr. Bush's wife, and you decided not to do that anymore.
Discretion is always a better part of valor.
Yeah.
That's for my real retirement issue. Anyway, getting back to more serious topics, the lead story on the front page of the Jewish Light, the lead international story, has also been all over the world. The release of Gilad Shalit after 6 years imprisonment in a Gaza prison under Hamas in exchange for 1,027 Palestinian terrorists, many of whom have mucho blood on their hands. Do you think this was a good deal or a bad deal for Israel?
I think it was a bad deal for Israel, but I'm not sure that given general public opinion in Israel, they could have made any other deal. As Prime Minister Netanyahu said, it was probably the last time to make a deal because he saw where the politics of the Middle East are going and realized, I better do something now or we're never going to be able to bring him home. When I say it's a bad deal, of course it empowers the forces of terrorism and it empowers those on the street. I believe I read one quote from a Palestinian leader who said, great, now we should hijack at least one Israeli soldier every year, and until we have all of our prisoners back from the Israelis. So obviously there is some incentive created by this, thus making it a bad deal. But was there any other deal that the Israeli Prime Minister could have made? Probably not. And
I really agree with you. I think it was an unconscionably unfair deal, but it does show the premium that Israel puts on human life, and especially the life of not leaving a soldier dead or alive behind.
It also, the whole aftermath shows a stark contrast between leadership like Hamas's and Israeli leadership. You know, Israeli leadership who is, verklempt at bringing their soldier home, and Hamas leadership who is talking about how this will spur on, further war and violence against Israel, and achieve their goal of disabling Israel or making it no longer existent.
Your editorial this week focused on the Occupy Wall Street movement, quote unquote. Are the participants a serious group with serious ideas, or are they a modern version of a children's crusade or the old Narodnik movement in the pre-Soviet?
I think the incipient nature of the movement is not that unlike the Tea Party. With the Tea Party, you saw a tremendous number of different kind of constituencies. You saw the Howard Finch from Network, I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore.
Right.
You saw the religious right. You saw the anti-tax right. You saw some, quite frankly, you saw some racist kind of and anti-ethnic kind of voices in the Tea Party, anti-immigrant voices in the Tea Party, and actually some of them have been mirrored on the fringes of the Occupy Wall Street with some anti-Semitic voices. For an incipient movement to become something to be taken seriously, it's got to rid itself of hate-filled voices, of discrimination and prejudice-filled voices, and stand for something. I think there are kernels in the Occupy Wall Street movement of something, and that would be economic equality, social justice, things that say, voices that say, right now, while we've seen a concentration of wealth in the United States in the last 30 years like we've never seen before, coupled with a lack of growth in the economy, it leaves the other 90% of us to kind of fight it out for the scraps. And I think that's a powerful statement to be made.
Now, to what extent do the Occupy Wall Street and even the Tea Party movement represent, the good side of each of them represent Jewish values?
I think both of them can be construed as representing Jewish values. The Tea Party came across, or at least one of the kernels of the Tea Party, came across as the right-wing, rugged individualist, anti-government, get the government off our backs kind of voice. In some ways, in a fairly reactionary way, but nevertheless, those Jews who have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps in this country and believed in freedom of activity, freedom from government, certainly could be represented within the Tea Party movement. In the Occupy Wall Street movement, you have the very strong line of reform Jewish social justice in this country that you've written about for years and years. And you see shades of the labor movement. You see shades of the 60s anti-war movement. You see a little bit of history repeating itself in terms of those who are responding, but in this case, wanting to see government as an ally in helping to recreate economic justice and to recreate prosperity hopes for the middle class.
We were just talking about the Tea Party, and one of the early favorites of the Tea Party segment of the Republican base is current Texas Governor Rick Perry. And his wife this past week went on kind of what I would just call a crying jag, in which she said to the media that my poor husband, has been persecuted by his fellow Republicans, by the media, and I saw the burning bush that he should run for president before he did. And that, coupled with Reverend Robert Jeffress's comment about Mormonism and introducing Governor Perry as a true follower of Jesus, should we be unsettled as Jewish Americans at this kind of presumption that in order to be eligible for office, you have to be a good Christian?
Well, of course that goes without saying, but since you said it, I'll say yes. But I think an underlying question there is, what is the responsibility of a politician in making sure that they espouse a Catholic small c approach to religion in their public speaking? Most religious folks choose to go into politics because of some things that overlap with their religious and personal spiritual beliefs, whether it's social justice, whether it's the relationship between God and government, whatever it is. And I have no qualms about that, whether it's a Catholic John Kennedy, or whether it's a Mormon Mitt Romney. Louis Brandeis on the Supreme Court, I'm sure a lot of his legal and academic success was spurred on and motivated by his Jewish thought and his Jewish upbringing. I have no problem with that. I do think public figures and politicians, particularly when they're trying to reach out to a broad segment of the population, have a personal responsibility to make sure that they're not intentionally or otherwise denigrating those of another religious background.
Very good. And we saw the delayed dedication of the Martin Luther King Monument in Washington, D.C., and what kind of thoughts did that dedication trigger in your mind about how Jews should relate to the legacy of Martin Luther King?
Oh my gosh, and the legacy of Martin Luther King in the most expansive way, not only in terms of civil rights, but in terms of the thousands of Jews who at various times marched alongside him, and those who worked on behalf of Southern Poverty Law Center, those who worked on behalf of the NAACP, the collaborative aspects of the Jewish and the black communities in advocating for and pushing for civil rights legislation in this country. I mean, I think it is so ingrained in who we are and what we need to remember and be going forward.
And we remember when Abraham Joshua Heschel marched with Dr. King, he said, "I'm praying with my feet."
Exactly.
And that's a very positive note on which to end this session of Kop Talk. So until next time, thank you.
Thank you, and go Cardinals. You obviously can see how I'm dressed today, so woo! We'll see you next time. Bye.